Hello everyone, it's Matt Martin here from Photobook Cafe, and thank you for joining us for another episode in our series Behind the Photobook. Within this series we delve into the behind issues and thoughts of some of ours and hopefully some of your favourite photo books. We're talking to photographers, we're talking to designers, we're talking to bookshop owners, we're talking to publishers, we're talking to distributors. There's a whole range of people that are the whole building block behind making photo books. And we really want to be able to give you a proper insight into how these books are put together. I'm really excited to have a dear friend, as aren't they all, a photographer, bookmaker, artist, teacher, Tomasz Laczny. Tomasz does some of the workshops with us. He's a very experienced bookmaker. He's kind of a shaman in a way of sort of how he puts images on a page. And we're going to be talking about his book End Time, which he's just produced, this artist book. It's a stunning publication, very, very beautiful, and a very heavy topic. So we're really excited to have Tomasz come in for a chat. So, as always, we are Photobook Cafe. We are a photo book library based in Shoreditch in London. We have a bar, a cafe, we do food, drink. We also do photographic events, so we do book launches, exhibitions, workshops, whole range of stuff within the photographic field. And we're also part of Rapid Eye Darkrooms, which is a pro lab based just down the road from us, where you can get processing, hand printing, digital C-type printing, everything you need to go from taking pictures to getting them processed, having a show, making a book. It's all here under one roof. So thank you for joining us, and this is my conversation with Tomasz Laczny. So, Tomasz, thank you for joining us for Behind the Photo Book. Today we are going to be looking at your new book, End Time?
Yep.
So, just give us a little bit of background about how this book came about.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem.
The book was developed during the last 2 years, I would say, maybe 2.5 years. And it was basically, that was first project where I didn't photograph at all. So it was new experience for me. Because my previous books, I always use either archival materials or I photograph for the book. So this is first time that I basically was stuck to the desk and was searching. Mostly I search internet and basically spent first year and a half trying to find something which was of interest to me. So the subject matter is about ending the world, basically. Ending the world in a sense that the civilization might collapse very soon for different reasons. One obvious reason is, of course, climate change, but also there are other things which happens now in the world. And all these things can basically lead to the end of human civilization. So that was the background for the book. However, I didn't want to go in the field and find these images somewhere else, but I wanted to rather look at our past and find something which happened in the past, but which can be trigger for what actually could lead to the end of our civilization. So there are plenty of stories in the archives, at least from the beginning of the photography, where you can find photographers photographing different disasters, starting from wars. I mean, this is the most obvious direction, but also like cataclysms environmental cataclysms or economical disasters, which led to migrations of thousands of people, or even mass hunger. So basically, I was looking for things like that, and also like recently, of course, pandemic that trigger imagination of lots of storytellers and also photographers. So I also like look at the microscopic world and how microscopic world can actually influence what's gonna happen in the future as for us as a human beings.
Right. And I think it's especially an interesting subject at the minute. I mean, especially with, there's so much going on in the world. It always is, but especially now it feels like there is very much this sort of tension and also this idea that we're not learning from the past.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the understanding I get of it is to sort of really show us, what has been before and why are we not learning from that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you felt sort of going through the book? Was it something,
Yeah.
I don't know, in your head where you're just like, what, all this stuff has happened and
Yeah.
why are we not learning?
Yeah. I mean, what I have in my book is, of course, only fraction of what happened in the history of the world. I mean, photography is relatively young, so I couldn't capture like the previous ages, and I couldn't show. Although I use some, like for example, here some drawings, but this is just very in a very small amount here in the book.
Mm.
So answering your question, yeah, that's basically was the idea of the book, that what happened again and again and again, and it looks like we never learn from what we've done in the past. So basically the book is constructed from two parts, and I have some events which are explored in the sequences of the pages following to each other, and then it leads to the middle of the book, which is basically blank page. And then I have the second part of the book, which is actually repetition of what happened in the first part of the book, in a sense that I use images which are very, very similar. However, they are not exactly the same. So you can kind of have this feeling of deja vu, that this actually happened before, because you looked at something which was. So it's a kind of simple trick used by like writers or even photographers in their books, that there is this mirror. We have first part of the book, and then second part of the book is basically mirror of the first part of the book. So if I would describe this in relation to time, I would say the first part relates to the past, and then the second part relates to the future, basically.
But the future, but then pointing back at the past to recount what the future will entail.
Yeah, so it's basically imagining what could happen in the future, but using the past images. Yeah, so I'm not kind of using, let's say, ChatGPT or other engine to kind of create how it could look like in the future, but actually I'm going back to the archives and pointing out that this happened twice, this happened 3 times. So there is probably the case that it's gonna happen in the future again.
So when going into sort of looking for this work, what was the sort of jumping off point? Was it more books? Was everything online? Were you going into archival institutions or?
So basically the book started from a short story which I wrote at some point.
Is this the one at the beginning?
Yeah, it's at the beginning of the book. So basically I use biblical story of beginning of the world. So this is Adam and Eve going out from Garden of Eden, and I basically reversed this story and I made it the other way around. So Adam and Eve come back to Garden of Eden to die, basically, because they are the last remaining people on the earth. So that was the trigger for like imagining, how this could look like. And also because I think, in contrast to Eastern tradition, where you have this kind of recurring story again and again in their books, at least, in Christian tradition and in Bible, you actually don't have that one. The Bible, basically, how the Bible is constructed is that you have new events, but they don't come back again and again. And this you can see in Eastern tradition. So I wanted to kind of put upside down the biblical story and don't finish with apocalypse, but actually finish with something which created the world. So I came back to Adam and Eve, and then I wanted to kind of mimic the same in the structure of the book. So that's why I have this split for 2 parts. Yeah? So there's this starting which mirrors which basically takes images from the archives, and then there is a mirror of it which takes also images from archives but actually points out to the future. Yeah? So that was the main idea of the book.
And so with the structure, so the structure of this, I think you did a lot of archive research online, so a lot of archives are available for you to get into. What was the sort of, were you jumping through just keywording, seeing what sort of came up, or were there certain points of reference that you had already noted on?
So basically I started with, I wanted to use some real archives, but it was very difficult to find, enter to these places. So I just gave up, and because internet, you have so much stuff available on the internet that actually I think that was good that I was rejected from some of the archives, because I actually concentrated fully for a year and a half on the internet, and I really found like amazing stuff. Not everything I used in this book, because I couldn't use, because it was either not in the line of the story, or there was some copyright issues or other stuff, but basically amazing stuff in the internet. And of course I started with obvious places like Library of Congress in the States, which is amazing source of imaginary, and they have everything very well prepared. The images are scanned in very high resolution. Some of them are even like 600 pixels. So it's like amazing. You can print poster from that, basically. And it's copyright free. I mean, not everything, but if this is 100 years old image, then pretty much it's copyright free, which was great. And then of course here, when I was doing research about, here meaning UK, when I was doing research about potential diseases, then I went of course to Wellcome Collection, which is another great library,
which is based here in London.
Yeah, this is just amazing what they have. And I didn't really use any special keywords, because the thing is that they have their own internal search engine, and then the search engine is, I think there is some sort of artificial intelligence involved in the process, because once you start searching, then it recommends you images.
Right, so it has like a suggested
and it
train of thought.
It's great. It's great because I would spend like thousands of hours to actually figure it out, the next possible image, and then I have suggestion because of this facility there, which was great. So it actually helped me a lot to it was a big shortcut for me to find what I want. Of course I had to edit it at the end of the process, because I couldn't put everything.
So how many images are in the book?
In the book is approximately 1,000 images. I think less than 1,000. It's about 900 something, as far as I remember.
And what was your first initial sort of, before getting into that editing
I
process?
had over 2,000 images
Right,
on the
okay,
board
wow.
when I started editing it. So the editing process was also very challenging, because usually challenging, and of course I learned a lot. Usually when I edit, I use physical cardboard, small physical cardboards printed, and I put this on the table, or I use wall. Recently also I have like a metal boards, and then I use magnets.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, with 2,000 images, it's really difficult to put
Need
anywhere
a big space.
that
Yeah,
even if it's like a stamp size, yeah, then it's really difficult to manage it. So at the end of the day, I use application which is called Miro. It's basically application used for collaboration when you have meetings online, for example. So you can
it's like a presented mood board, isn't
yeah,
it? And you
I
can
mean
move stuff.
more like I would say brainstorming application, when you can put whatever you want, even I think recently video, and then you know, make a sequence of something you want to put together. So I found it great. I basically, because I could zoom in and zoom out, so I could, you know, make some regions when I have some images, and then I basically learned what I have there, and I remembered, and I could come back because I started to connect the images. So it was actually quite interesting how you can remember where all your images are, like even if you have 2,000 images. Yeah, so it was good exercise.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, it's such a huge undertaking, and I think even for just, I guess the traditional photo book and anything, well, it could be any sort of size, but I guess in a traditional sense, you're hitting somewhere between, 45 to 75 images or 60 images. And so it's a big undertaking. Had you ever done anything on this sort of scale before with your other previous books?
I mean, because it's when I approach project, I probably have like about 300, 400 images if I shoot something. I mean, sometimes I work with people, they show me like maybe 500 images here, but that's pretty much it. 1,000 images, it's I mean, I know, of course I know people who shoot a lot and then they have like 1,000 images at the beginning, but I think if I don't shoot a lot of digital recently, so maybe that's the reason why, because simply I cannot afford to shoot more than than 300 images here. But maybe if you shoot in digital, then yeah, maybe you can have 2,000, and But then I guess you do edit even on your camera. Like you just delete the images, just which repeats. So.
Yeah. And so, are these images that we see here, are these printed and then scanned, or are they laid out? Are you using like InDesign, for example, or something?
Yeah, so basically, first of all, I use Miro, and actually I made all the edit in Miro, and then so what you see is actually kind of smoothened out version of the book, because initial book was actually concertina.
Okay.
And then concertina, which unfolded in this way also.
So you ended up with like a double line.
Yeah, so basically you had to open the book in that direction, and then you could also open the book in that direction. And the idea was actually that you have one image. So the edit is one image. Yeah, so
right, so when it's fully open.
Yeah, so you have full, you have whole book as a one image.
Yeah.
And it's actually I haven't changed a lot in this. So basically, it comes from that.
Okay.
The challenge was I couldn't really print a lot of books like that, because it's to print concertina is really difficult. So I just gave up. I couldn't buy parts to my printer, and I have to have basically a special roll to keep the print consistent. Otherwise, it's not gonna print consistently. And I couldn't get it because my printer is quite old. and the rollers sometimes show up on eBay, but it was really difficult
Mm.
to find it. So I just decided to print this in this other form, which is like classical book.
And this is inkjet
Yeah,
printing?
this is inkjet. The reason why is because I use Japanese paper for that, and it's a kozo paper, but it made the prints slightly, the color is slightly off, which I actually loved, because if you would compare it with the previous version of the book, the images were like almost super sharp, some of them super sharp. And I didn't really like it at the end, because I wanted to have this feeling of the story being a bit like not from this world in a sense. Yeah, so this this use of this special paper and combination of special paper and inkjet gave me this decoloration of colors, and they graphicized a little bit. You can see it, like you have almost three shades of color, which is nice, I think, for this
rather
type
than
of
just a
work.
complete sort of black and white
Yeah.
image. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's nice. And it's it does have a beautiful feel to it. What's your, when coming to decisions like paper and things like that, how do you sort of get to that point? Is it a lot of testing on different paper stocks, or did you have something in mind?
I'm a big fan of Japanese papers, so I usually narrow down
Right.
to Japanese papers. But it's a bit tricky to actually test these papers, because when I was trying to purchase this in Japan, the problem was this shop didn't have facility to print it, so I couldn't check it.
Okay.
And then I have to go somewhere else, and then this facility didn't want to print this for me because it was Japanese paper, even though we were in Japan, because they said, these printers are tricky to print, and they may actually make a jam in the printer, and they don't want to do that, so they said no. So at the end of the day, the shop owner agreed to do test for me. I had to pay for that, and the test was okay, so I purchased the paper. Then I purchased a roll of paper so I could bring it here to the UK.
And what's the what is your reasoning for choosing Japanese paper? What is it that stands out to you?
So basically, very important for me is like the relationship you have when you touch your book. Yeah, because I mean, this is one of this. I think this is one of very rare arts when you actually, part of the experience is touching the art object. Yeah, because you don't touch photograph on the wall, you don't touch like painting, you don't even touch the sculpture. I mean, there are some cases when you can touch the sculpture, but it's rather unusual. And the book is like you deliberately,
it's made to behold. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, held.
So very important is like how the paper feels in your hands. Yeah, so in this paper is actually has two surfaces. One is more shiny, and the other one is more like matte. So
you can feel that, and you can. I don't know if we'll be able to sort of see on the camera, but you can really sort of feel that grain, feel that sort of that movement and that roughness, compared to this, which is a lot smoother.
Yeah. So basically the book is designed that you have these sequences of matte and then more shiny spreads, going again and again and again. So it's kind of like a cyclical repetition of the surfaces of the paper. So it was also part of the design of this book.
So then, moving from the idea of it being a concertina, when were there other few sort of ideas on how you wanted the shape to be?
No, I basically, I think the concertina was quite good concept. If I would have some financial help, I probably would go into that direction and produce book like that. But I really wanted to push this book out to the world, and I only, this is basically my money to put into this book, so I had to like make some decisions, and I went straight from concertina basically to this version. I was just experimenting maybe with different sizes of the book. I didn't want this book to be too small. I had like one version is maybe this size.
Right.
I should bring this. I don't have it, but anyway, one is let's say concertina was this size, and then I made it a slightly bigger, and then I decided this size is actually the best for the experience of the images. And I found that if it's too small, then you actually lose the detail, and it's the details are actually quite important in some of these pictures. So
yeah, no, it is a nice size. And so, what's the obviously, because you've done bookmaking workshops with us. You're a very experienced bookmaker in terms of making artist books. What's the sort of process once you've done the printing? I guess actually an interesting question really would be what do you set yourself as a budget? Because you do make a small. This is a run of 30 or
30 books.
And then some special editions.
Yeah,
as well?
I mean, I actually also sold some dummies. So basically, I printed 3 dummies, and I sold some of them. So that was also part of the edition. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't do more. First of all, because it's very time consuming to print it. I do everything by my own. I probably should have outsourced it, but I kind of like doing this stuff. However,
I feel like you enjoy the pain.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, I think with a lot of your books, there's so many intricate sections to each one, and it's also the sort of idea of sort of painstakingly putting something like this together, and then really having that sort of that long period of each one, binding it and putting all the sections together. I think
I mean, it's like meditation basically. Yeah, like you, especially when you print this, it's like these pages print so slowly, and you like, but it's fascinating process, because it's like you conceptualize it first, then you do this research, and then you see it materializing in front of your eyes. So like you see, it's like almost with child, like you see how it's growing. So I really enjoy this process.
Yeah, and it's it's caring for it, it's looking after it, it's making sure that and I think with outsourcing stuff sometimes you can lose that, because obviously you have to put your trust in someone else, and especially when you've sort of had this huge amount of labor over something. If you can then, I think that's, for me, that's why I really like making books on my own, and I know what my sort of limit is, but also I like to sort of stretch that and be like, I can add this, and I can make this many copies. And I do like that sort of idea of it is a meditative state, especially with binding, where you've got a stack of 50 copies and you have to think, okay, I've got to do this in a certain amount of time, but I'm just going to each one, and I think each one has to feel like the first book, because as soon as you get into that idea of either rushing it or thinking, I've done 25, so I'll be good at this, I think you always have to think, especially with binding, that each one is the first one, and you have to put that amount of care into it, which I think is really important. And so how many so with something like binding especially, is that sort of something that, are you completely self-taught? Did you study bookbinding, or?
No, I always enjoyed making books, and I think it comes from, I was thinking about this, where it's coming from, but I think it actually comes from my dad, because he has nothing to do with art, but he was a teacher at some point, and he was a sailing teacher basically, and he used to make chronicles, because he organized like big events for the students, like during the summertime, there was like hundreds of people, and they all learned how to sail on the lakes. So he first of all, he was documenting it. So he had camera and he was photographing, and then he made this big books, chronicles, and then he calligraphed the letters, and then
wow.
he glued the pictures. So I was, I was a little kid then, and I was looking at this, and I think, that's where it comes from, because I was so fascinated with the process, how he made all this stuff. So I think it's basically from the childhood.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I think when I was a kid, I drew. For me, I think it was more like I'd be drawing, and I'd sort of draw different, not exactly like comics. They wouldn't really sort of have like a rhythm, but just different drawings. And then my mum was quite like, "Oh, it'd be great to how can we put these together?" So she would show me how to sort of like do like just like a 3-hole bind or something. We'd make these little sort of booklets and stuff. But I think it's being a maker, isn't it? It's being able to sort of and exactly what you're saying about the person that looks at this book and how we look at photo books. They are to be held, and I think when you are at that sort of when you are hand making books, you really get to sort of experiment and feel exactly what the viewer is going to feel, and it's all those sort of things while making it just can lift it so much more when someone actually puts it, and they can feel it's a handmade book. And I think it's such a makes it such a bigger impression on people when they can feel that, I think.
Yeah, I think handmade books is such an interesting subject, because you cannot really produce like, I mean, if you want, you probably could produce like 200, but good luck with that. But you kind of produce maybe 30 or like 50 copies, and that's it. And then you you just put them in the world, and they go somewhere, and then that there's only these 30 people who will have this book. And it's quite interesting. Like, I think photo book market is becoming like very saturated with incoming books, and I don't think that there's equal amount of newcoming readers of the book. So in a way, I think we have to kind of like think really how many copies we should produce. In a sense, how many books market really needs of your project. Because
exactly.
if you produce like 100 books or even 200 books, and then you really will sell only 30 of these books, then the question is, why are you doing this?
I know. I mean, how many stories do we hear of someone publishing a book and then 2 years later being like, "Oh yeah, still got boxes of them under the bed," sort of thing. And so, what's your? I mean, obviously, these become, in a sense, art objects. They are something that are to be obviously read, but they are also something to be, viewed and displayed. It's something that I think it's such a beautiful piece in its own right, even before you start sort of looking into the pages. What's your thoughts on how you sort of, because I think it's interesting for people watching when you're making something like this, how do you come up with like a pricing structure? What's the difference between that and with the special edition? How are you what's your audience? Are you working just directly to collectors, or is it trying to find stuff in bookshops, or what's the sort of direction that you take?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good question, because actually this is question you should ask yourself when you start doing book. You should ask this question before actually you will start making book, because this determines how what you're gonna do with the book, basically. So in my case, these are handmade books. So first of all, it's not gonna be like there will be lots of them, and mostly I think about collectors when I produce the books, because I do consider this rather as art pieces than like a standard book. So therefore the price is reflects that basically. Yeah. So, and then also I put a lot of labor in these books. It's not like, you know, I just press the button and everything goes from the printer. It's not like that. So I think they could be even more expensive. I never really like properly calculated my labor, but I guess, you know, I can earn this money somewhere else. I just love doing it, and you know, this is such a rewarding process for me that, you know, I just cannot stop doing it.
Yeah, you're addicted. You know, it's something that you just have to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of that sort of process. Yeah, obviously, as you teach workshops as well, which you've done a few here at Photobook Cafe as well as other places around the world. You also do some in Berlin, and you have others coming up. What's your process? Obviously, do you find a difference when teaching? Are you taking a lot of your own advice when going into something like this? Is it sort of what's your sort of format when working within a group and they're providing images to you? Is it it's obviously different between every project, but do you sort of start with a sort of a baseline, and similar to putting something like this together when people sort of present their work to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is also a very interesting question. I mean, so of course, if someone shows me a project, then if I start helping them to edit it, there is my influence into that project. It's not like I see the project and I just, you know, put them in order and there's no me in this project. Yeah, like it's always like that. If you collaborate with someone, then you will see the influence of the other person. So ultimately, that basically when I also participate in this workshop by teaching. I also participate in this workshop in a sense that I am becoming co-author of what's going on the table. So
you see it as a collaboration with that artist,
yes,
and with that work.
So of course, you know, I try to share my knowledge, what I know, and I talk about like principles I use, and I give them the tips. How can they, you know, try to put this together? But then at the end of the day, if I start editing this, this is kind of like we becoming collaborators of this project in a way. So this is very similar to what happens when you basically work as the author of the book with editor, or as the author of the book with designer of the book. Yeah, it's basically collaboration. It becomes something which comes from your personality as the author of the book and my personality as a editor of the book, for example. Yeah, so you will see these things. You will see the way you photograph, and then you will see the way I edit, and then it becomes visible on the table, basically. So,
what's it like doing something? Well, I think with a workshop, sometimes you can have this thing where the group just turn up and everyone puts their work out, and then you kind of have to think quite quickly. What is this person? What is their story? What is the imagery? When you're doing stuff, you try and get people to at least sort of send you stuff. And do they give you a bit of a backstory, so you sort of have a preempted idea going into it?
So I usually ask people to send pictures in advance. But then during the workshop, I ask people to, of course, I introduce myself at the beginning, but then I ask people to introduce themselves too. However, I try not to use during this introduction process their images. So I ask them to basically verbalize what they want to achieve, who they are, and what they want to achieve, and then confront that with what we see on the table. You know, what kind of images we have, and sometimes it's very. For me, this is always the most interesting part of the workshop. I always take notes when people talk. Some people might think that, you know, I'm not paying attention.
Right.
Actually,
yeah.
I actually take a notes because I want to have this, you know, written down. and based on that, and then when I see the pictures, I try to combine those two things together. And this is the most interesting part of the process for me, because then you actually construct the word, yeah, because you have like a verbalized version of the word, the setup of this word, and then you see the images, and then you have to combine this together. So it's very this is the most creative part of the whole this workshop for me. And you know, usually it goes quite quickly, and usually people are surprised, you know. I mean, it's obvious if someone else is doing your work, then you suddenly see yourself, you see yourself and your work by someone else's eyes, yeah. And this is, of course, this is surprising, but you know, I think most of the people react very positively to see, you know, what actually, how they can build the world differently.
Did you work with anyone when doing this book?
No. So so the thing is, my previous books, I work with I try to seek a lot of support, a lot of influence, a lot of opinions. And what I learned, that, you know, at the end of the day, you are, you know, your own captain of your ship, yeah. So
Yep.
you are basically responsible for all the decisions yourself. And this is what I always tell people, yeah. It's good to seek advice, you should do that, you should you know, confront this with other people. But you know, at the end of the day, this project won't satisfy everyone, yeah. I mean, your word is not necessarily someone else's word, yeah. So at the end of the day, it's about making your voice clear, you know, who you are and what you want to say, and what kind of voice you want to bring to this book. And you know, there will be a lot of people who will criticize you because you want to do something which they don't like, yeah? And that's okay, that's how the process is. So at the end of the day, you are responsible to basically make all these decisions by yourself. So basically what I'm saying is, you are alone.
Yeah,
that's my advice. You are alone with this thing.
Yeah, I think I always have a struggle with collaboration. I think I need to get better at it. I think it's always I when making books, I always feel alone. But I think maybe, I don't know if it's a stubbornness or it's a kind of, I trust my own intuition, which obviously can sometimes be a blessing and a hindrance. But you know, it's good to get other people's eyes on it. But
Yeah.
like you say, at the end point, it is, you know, I solely believe that you should really go with your sole decision. And I think that's also in the truth of like editing. Sometimes you can do an edit and you can sit and ponder it and move stuff around. And I personally find a lot of the time I'm going back to that initial edit, because it's something that's just quick and raw and your brain's ticking over. And obviously with more time, like writing, you go back and you rewrite, and obviously you can make something fuller and better. And obviously that's a great way to work in books. But I think it's obviously different for each person. And I personally find that that first initial thing that I put down on the, you know, on the page or on the wall is sometimes quite close to where I need to be. What turned off?
I think this one.
Oh, that one turned off. Well, that's okay. We don't need that one anymore. So yeah, I guess that's sort of, I don't really know if there was a sort of question in there, but I guess maybe.
Yeah, but you have to remember that when you actually work with designer or you work with editor, then it becomes something else. Yeah, it becomes process of actually exchanging the ideas. But then still, if you are author of the book, you are the captain of the ship. Yeah, so you know, you might listen to some advices, but you don't need to necessarily agree with everything,
Yeah.
because it might not actually serve your vision, or it may be the other way around. The suggestion is so interesting and so surprising that actually you find it that it serves your vision of the book, but you
True.
wouldn't never
Yeah.
ever thought about this. So collaboration can be great way of actually improving your vision in a way, in some sense. But what I just wanted to say is, like, if you will show book to a lot of reviewers or critics or whatever, there will be plenty of them saying, it's like, I don't understand the book, I don't like it, or whatever. And that's okay. It's just the thing is, you won't make everyone happy with the book, because our visions are I found the books which are the most book is focused on something, the vision is narrowed, then the better the outcome for me is. But that means that you're not talking to everyone. Not everyone will find it interesting, because it doesn't necessarily meet their word.
No, I think that's really interesting. That's a great point. I think that's a good point to end on. You have a workshop coming up with us, which is the 25th and 26th. There's still places for this, so please check it out. I'll put some links below. And thank you very much, Tomasz. That was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.